certain players forced the NBA to make new rules that changed the landscape of the league.
A locker room, 4 guns laid out on a table, a note beside them, 2 words. Pick one. This is the moment that ended a career. Not a torn ACL, not a bad contract, a card game. But rewind 8 years and this same man was the most feared scorer alive, a player who once did something to the Lakers that only Wilt Chamberlain had ever done. So how does a kid nobody wanted end up here, staring down a loaded gun in his own locker room? To understand that, we have to go all the way back to a draft night where every single team in the league got it wrong. June 27th, 2001. The NBA Draft. Gilbert Arenas walks in as one of the best pure scorers in college basketball. Just months earlier, he'd led Arizona all the way to the national championship game, dealing with a knee injury the whole way before finally falling to Duke. Teams knew what he could do on the court. That wasn't the problem. The problem was what happened off it. During his pre-draft workouts, Arenas reportedly dominated in front of the Boston Celtics, then skipped a second session to let his Achilles heal before other teams could see him. That decision got twisted. A rumor spread that he wasn't taking the process seriously, that he was immature, and once that label stuck, teams started crossing his name off their boards entirely. So he falls. Round 1 comes and goes, and his name still hasn't been called. He keeps falling until the Golden State Warriors finally take him, 31st overall, the very first pick of the second round. Second-round picks don't get parades. They get a locker and a prayer. Arenas chose a number for his jersey that day. 0. Not a tribute. A reminder. The number of minutes the so-called experts thought he'd ever play in the league. His rookie year wasn't glamorous either. He was so broke off his own signing bonus that, by his own account, he was sleeping at the Warriors arena just to get by. He started only 30 games that season for a team that finished dead last in the entire Western Conference. But somewhere in that empty gym, night after night, something was quietly building, and a single coaching change was about to let it out. Golden State fired their head coach mid-season, and the interim replacement finally handed Arenas real playing time. He didn't waste a second of it. By his second season, he wasn't just playing, he was thriving. Good enough to be named the league's most improved player. He credited Warriors legend Chris Mullin with teaching him something Kobe Bryant's work ethic alone couldn't. Not just how to work hard, but how to actually think the game at an elite level. But here's the cruel twist in this story. Because he'd been a second-round pick, the league's own rules meant Golden State legally couldn't match the money other teams were about to throw at him in free agency. The franchise that discovered him, that watched him sleep in their own gym to make ends meet, was powerless to keep him. The NBA was so embarrassed by that loophole that they rewrote the rulebook to stop it from ever happening again, and they named the new rule after him. The Gilbert Arenas provision, still part of the collective bargaining agreement today. He signed with the Washington Wizards for 6 years and $60 million and kept his signature number 0. His first season in the Capitol was hampered by an abdominal injury that cost him nearly 30 games. But by his second year, paired with Larry Hughes to form one of the league's highest-scoring backcourts, Arenas made his first career All-Star team and dragged the Wizards to their first playoff series win in over 2 decades. The very next round, a young forward out of Cleveland ended his season. His name was LeBron James. It would not be the last time. Twice more, across the next 2 postseasons, LeBron and the Cavaliers eliminated Washington in the first round, even as Arenas dropped 30, 35, sometimes over 40 points a night, trying to will his team past him. In one of those series, Arenas hit a game winner that the Wizards' own coach hadn't even drawn up for him. It didn't matter. LeBron kept finding a way to survive. Around this same stretch, Arenas was snubbed from an all-star team most fans thought he'd clearly earned and passed over entirely for Team USA's World Championship roster. Arenas wasn't chasing a championship anymore. He was chasing a statement, and revenge quietly became the fuel behind every game he played. He started calling it a vengeance tour, and on one December night in Los Angeles, he found the single biggest stage in the entire league to prove it. December 17th, 2006. Staples Center. Kobe Bryant, fresh off dropping 81 points against Toronto earlier that same year, decides to guard Arenas personally. Phil Jackson could have subbed Kobe out defensively to save his legs for the fourth quarter. He didn't. He believed Kobe was still the best matchup on the floor. He was wrong. Arenas doesn't just score that night, he explodes. Threes, contested pull-ups, free throw after free throw, shots that by any reasonable basketball logic shouldn't go in, and go in anyway. Regulation ends tied at over 100 points each. Overtime begins, and Arenas takes over completely, pouring in 16 points in that single extra period alone, an NBA record for points scored in one overtime that still stands today. When the final buzzer sounds, the scoreboard reads 60 points for Arenas on just over half his shots, with 21 made free throws. The first player to score 60 against the Lakers since Wilt Chamberlain 40 years earlier. Kobe, who dropped 45 points himself that same night, still lost the game. And afterward, still visibly stunned, he told reporters that Arenas simply doesn't seem to have a conscience out there. Arenas didn't slow down after that game either. He kept the momentum rolling for weeks, dropping 54 points on a red-hot Phoenix Suns team, then 40 more on Seattle. Gilbert Arenas had officially broken the league, but greatness like this always comes with a cost, and his body was already quietly starting to pay the bill. Behind the highlight reels, Arenas was falling apart physically. First one knee surgery, then another, wiping out large chunks of 2 straight seasons entirely. The explosive first step that once made him unguardable was slowly disappearing, and everyone around the team could see it happening in real time. He returned for opening night the following season anyway, dropped over 30 points immediately, and quieted every doubt, at least for one game. But basketball wasn't what would ultimately end his career. Something far smaller than a torn ligament was already coming, something that started, of all places, on an airplane. December 2009. The Wizards are flying home from a road trip through Phoenix. A card game breaks out to kill the time on the flight. Bure, a game as old as NBA locker rooms themselves. Arenas joins the hand midway through, and the pot balloons past $1,000. Javaris Crittenton, a young teammate making a fraction of Arenas' salary, loses big and doesn't take it well. Words are exchanged right there on the plane. Threats follow, first in the air, then again in the shuttle van after landing, right in front of the rest of the team. Nobody thought much of it in the moment. Trash talk happens in every locker room in the league. But 2 days later at practice, Gilbert Arenas decided to make a point. He walked into the Wizards' locker room and laid 4 guns out in front of his own locker stall, in the exact spot where Michael Jordan himself once dressed. A note attached. Pick one. He has always maintained it was a joke, simply a way to call Crittenton's bluff after all the tough talk. Crittenton didn't laugh. Instead, Crittenton pulled out his own gun, already loaded. He cocked it and pointed it directly at Arenas. For a few seconds, nobody in that room breathed. Then panic. Teammates who'd been laughing and joking just moments earlier scattered for the exit, the last man out locking the door behind him. Only one player stayed behind, talking Crittenton down until he finally lowered the weapon. Arenas quietly stepped back and walked away. No shots were fired that day. But something had already broken in that room that no amount of winning could ever repair. The story stayed relatively quiet at first, until weeks later before a game against Philadelphia, Arenas mimicked shooting his own teammates with his fingers during pre-game introductions. That single careless gesture is what finally reached NBA Commissioner David Stern's desk. He suspended Arenas indefinitely, and soon after for the remainder of the season entirely, 50 games total without pay. Arenas pleaded guilty to a felony charge of carrying an unlicensed pistol outside a home or business, 30 days in a halfway house, 2 years of probation, roughly $7.5 million in lost salary. Javaris Crittenton walked away with only probation, but his own NBA career was already effectively over, and he never played another game in the league again. When Arenas finally returned for the following season, he made a symbolic change, switching his number away from 0 for the first time since college, trying to leave the entire incident behind him. It didn't work. The Wizards, meanwhile, had drafted a new franchise cornerstone in John Wall, and the writing was already on the wall for Arenas in Washington. Just 21 games into that comeback season, he was traded to the Orlando Magic. He became a role player there, backing up Jameer Nelson, a stunning fall for a man who'd once outscored Kobe Bryant on the league's biggest stage. When the 2011 lockout ended, the Magic waived him under the league's brand new amnesty clause, making him the first player in NBA history to carry that distinction. One final season followed in Memphis, coming off the bench behind Mike Conley. By 2012, at just 30 years old, Gilbert Arenas was out of the NBA entirely. This wasn't the last time a single locker room decision quietly ended an NBA season. If you want to see how another star's story unraveled behind the scenes, there's a video on your screen right now that goes even deeper into one. Looking back, the same fearlessness that made Gilbert Arenas untouchable on a basketball court is the exact same fearlessness that ended his career off of one. The kid nobody wanted turned that rejection into a signature number, a Most Improved Player award, an entire rule named after him, and a 60-point night that Kobe Bryant himself couldn't forget. Then, in the space of one card game and one locker room, all of it came undone. He didn't just break the NBA. In the end, the NBA broke him right back.